chirping crickets. Gator snap, snap, can you dig it? Eagles are sharp in the high sky. Jungle beats under the midnight sky. Cool animal town, it's wild and free. Read the lunge under the tangerine. Swing like monkeys, jump like frogs. Down into the jungle with the cool animal blog.
Hi, it's Nat from the Cool Animal blog. We were really pleased to interview wildlife enthusiast Bernard Price, who we initially wanted to talk with about bat and bird life in our local area. When we met Bernie and his lovely wife Debbie at their house, we actually found that he'd worked extensively in Madagascar with the Fossa, which for us was especially exciting, and we wanted to get the juicy deets into his time on his Millennium Fellowship. We also wanted to say a big thank you to Bernie and Debbie for having us. If you'd like to learn more about the Fossa, the local legend Bernie, and his experiences in Madagascar, keep listening.
Hi, my name's Bernard Price. I'm a retired university lecturer and zoologist. I've been retired for some years. I was brought up on a farm in rural Ireland. My grandfather was very keen on, he was the local vet, I suppose you might say, though he wasn't actually qualified, but everyone brought animals to him. And I do recall as a child, I had a pretty wonderful childhood on that farm because he kept loads of pets and animals that he'd rescued. We had a deer that we only got rid of because it attacked the postman. It used to cut him off as it went past. We had jackdaws, pheasants, and he used to have a lot of goldfinches and things like that, which I suppose these days would have been a bit on this. But my grandfather was wonderful. He was an old traditional Irishman, really. His pipe never left his mouth, being the Peterson pipe, the black suit, the blackthorn stick, a couple of dogs at his heels. But he gave me, because he knew every bird. And, well, I thought he knew every bird until one day, and we used to get these itinerant people who used to come to help with the hay, and there was a guy came called Paddy the Bird. They said, "Oh, you got to meet Paddy the Bird, sure, bird," and I was about 9. This old boy with a clay pipe, you see. And I discovered Paddy the Bird could do every bird song known to man perfectly. But my grandfather was really the one, because cages taught me how to track animals, taught me all about birds and bird life and everything. So he was a wonderful influence. He lived to 97, even though he smoked every day of his life. He smoked that Irish plug tobacco. Should have killed him really, but it never did. But I suppose I've never forgotten him really, even though he died when I was about 14. He was my primary influence. When we had to come to England, of course, there's no work in Ireland, inevitably. My mother was a nurse, so of course she got a job there and married an Englishman who'd been coming over to Ireland for the fishing, and that's how they'd met, because we had a river to run it. And my father was a colonel in the British Army, and we went to live in Birmingham then, which I didn't like much really. I did my best, but the best thing was that my father's family had a cottage in Ulster, which is near here. It was on the edge of a wood. It was the Marquis of Hertford's shooting estate. So when I was about 12 or something, we used to spend weekends there, and that's what I really used to look forward to. There were only oil lamps in the cottage because we were across a lot of fields. But it was full of, one of the most horrific experiences I think I've ever had, natural history-wise, I had there. As the place was absolutely crawling with rabbits. And in the 50s, when I was a kid, meat was on ration. So my father, being a sort of taught us all to shoot and to set snares for rabbits as well. My first zoological expedition was something called a Millennium Fellowship. In the year 2000. It was pretty well impossible to go to Madagascar at that time. It had come out of being a French colony. It was hard to get to, it was expensive to get to, but of course it had incredible wildlife, not unlike any other in the world. And I was sent, expenses paid, to Chicago to be interviewed by a guy called Professor Luke Dollar. Luke Dollar had been a child film star, apparently, he told me, I don't realise. He said to me, "Hi Bernie, why do you want to go to Madagascar? I've been in Madagascar for some years myself. I'm running a project on catching the Fossa." And he said, "Do you know what?" I said, "Yeah, it's some sort of panther, but I've never actually seen one in the flesh." He said, "Well," he said, "let me ask you a few questions. You've written down on your phone that you like keeping chickens." I said, yeah. He said, oh, that might be quite useful, he said, and you've got a zoology degree in primatology? And I said, yeah. My neighbour down the road who worked for Sky TV, I gave us a reference, and she said, I've had your reference through, and is it all right? And she read through it. Anyway, next thing I knew, I'd actually got it. There's no direct flight to Madagascar from England. It has to go from France. I got given a list of things I was supposed to bring, which mystified me a little bit. They said, bring some of your favourite foods, because you won't be getting anything. So if you want to bring something. And I was scrabbling around Waitrose, Sainsbury's, looking at it. Oh, it's so simple, bars of Cadbury's chocolate things. So I packed a little pack of all those up. And then they said, light with clothing, tough boots, this sort of stuff, insect repellent. I got my Madagascar rather ornate French colonial passport. And anyway, they said, well, we'll meet you at Antananarivo, the capital of it's often called Tana because it's such an awkward name, at the airport, and we'll take it from there, you see. We arrived at the Antananarivo airport, which was in fact chaos, basically. I mean, it was full of blokes with guns, and there was no carousel for the luggage. It was thrown out of the plane onto the tarmac. And immediately a gang of guys in red baseball hats grabbed all of them and ran off with them. So this guy with me panicked totally. They've still got luggage. I said, no, they're not. It's got to be the system. It'll work. So of course the luggage was dragged into into a hall through a lot of armed guards, and because apparently there was some state of emergency going on there, which there often is in Madagascar. And anyway, we went to the car park of the airport, and there was an electric blue Toyota Hilux, I think it was, but it was the American truck version. It was huge. And in the doors was blaring Creedence Clearwater Revival music, I still remember, and sort of rock music. And Luke, who was the professor, stepped out, unlike any professor I'd ever seen. He went, hi everyone, he said, going to drive you to the small airport on the edge of Antananarivo. So he said, but unfortunately the planes are down, so we're going to have to drive to near a place called Majumba, which is in the southern part of Madagascar, to where the reserve is. Early in the morning we'd eventually arrive. So this is how the procedure of capturing the fossa. He said, we need to get a fossa. And he said, I've looked in your application form, it says you like chickens, you're going to need that. He said that you could shoot. He said, we need someone who's a marksman. So he said present to me. He said, this is I want to use one of these. So it was a gun basically, but it was one of those guns that shoots radio darts. A bit like a 410, but and I had a sort of bag of anaesthetic darts. He said, we're going to need these possibly. First thing we do, he said, get the traps. So all the traps were thrown in the back of the car. They were conventional spring traps. He said, right, we've got to bait the traps, he said. And of course there were all these chickens wandering around the village. He went, hey, look at all these. So he said, we've got to get all these chickens, and we're going to catch them and put them in the traps to bait for the fossa. A fossa? Well, if you think about Australia, everyone knows that Australia was cut off at a certain geological period, so they're all marsupials. Well, Madagascar was also cut off from Africa, so all the animals there are related primarily to kangaroos, and there are no monkeys or cats or anything there. These are a distinct animal. The fossa, I suppose, is as near as you can get to a civet cat, maybe. It's the large one. Most lemurs are vegetarian, but of course there's always a carnivore. In the case of Australia, it was the Tasmanian tiger, which they managed to wipe out. And in the case of Madagascar, it was the fossa, which was also suffering from cattle farmers didn't like. Big predators are never liked very much by agriculturalists because they attack cattle. So it's basically, and I can see a photo there, but it's a fairly bulky Labrador-sized panther type thing. But primarily it's half arboreal. It can chase lemurs up trees and things. Its primary food is lemurs. So they're all intertwined together inextricably, I'm afraid, the two types. So they all started running after them, rugby tackling them, falling all over the place. So I said, this is crazy, Luke. I said, it was crazy. I said, why don't you put them in an area where you can catch them easily? It's taking an hour of exhausting work to catch these bloody things, because they were very fleet of foot. They were game chickens, And he said, he said, well, no can do, Bernie, you know, we know a way of getting them. And I said, well, look, I said, from my old farming days, I said, you make a sort of a three-sided area, and you put some food in, they go into it, you can corner them. Oh, Bernie, he said, we can't do that, we've got no food we can give them. So I said, well, he said, I said, well, chuck some rice in. They had rice, they got no corn. He said, chuck some rice in. Of course, all the hens came in about 10 minutes. We caught them all in about 5 minutes. He said, I knew you were going to be valuable to me, he said. I knew you were going to be of value. And then we got the chickens into the forest. The forest was dense, full of chameleons, snakes, and all sorts of other things. It was a real jungle. The hens were left randomly with the chickens in the hope that there was a compartment, and if the fossa came into it, it sprung. You had to put some sticks in the way because they were quite clever. And anyway, he said, we lose them. He said, we lose them all the time. He said, I said, why? He said, well, they're not to drink. So I said, why don't you leave them some drink? So he said, we're not catting. Bernie, you do make, how can we leave them any drink? We got no plastic here, we got no compartments. And I quickly realised in Madagascar there was no plastic anywhere for anything. Everything had to be woven or back. So I looked around and there was some coconuts in the corner, and I said, why don't we cut the coconut shells in half and we'll have a bloke going around with a bowser and fill them with water. That's a good idea, he said. So anyway, he said, I knew you'd be good for this, he said. Then of course, we caught our first fossa, which was pretty exciting. He said, and I said, well, we've got to anaesthetise it somewhere. And Luke was obsessed with measuring them and examining them and making sure. You know, so we said this thing, and he said, oh, she's been caught twice before. She said Jean-Marie, she was called, and she's been caught, but she was really fighting hard, biting and everything, big claws. This is your first job, Bernie. What are you going to do? So I said, well, not. I said, please shoot a gun at it. She said, no, we got a blowpipe. So I was got a blowpipe with a small dart. So I darted her, and she was out after about 20 minutes. We got her out, we measured her, we took all the measurements, and then we had to take them to release them then in the truck afterwards. And that was our daily routine basically. It was catch chickens, load traps, catch the fossas if they came, which they didn't always, and bring them back. And then he said, you okay with these guys, he said, you're working with? Well, the guys I was working with, most of them were okay, they're a pretty nice lot, but there was one really awkward one who kept going off, you know, and I said, look, you've been told not to go off because it's quite, he said, particularly around the lake area, because there were crocodiles, believe it or not, who the locals knew attacked people, because he said that tilapia we're eating, they do that at the risk of their lives half the time, because the bloody crocodiles. Anyway, this bloke bloody disappeared on the third day. And of course he'd gone around the lake. So we had an all emergency alert. We had to go. We found him eventually, but I mean, you know, he risked really being eaten by crocodiles, you know. But other than that, you know, that was a bit of excitement. The other exciting thing, of course, was collecting things at night, because as you walk through the jungle at night in Madagascar, there's 1,000 eyes watching you: lemurs, chameleons, huge spiders, and of course. On my second trip, I discovered that these spiders, their webs are collected, and I've got a scarf in there which is actually made of spider silk, and they dye it naturally. So spider silk's quite popular, but it's made from the webs of spiders. I did nearly die once, but that was the only time I ever had faced real trouble. And there was an area called Sahara, which was a clearing in the jungle, because unfortunately in Madagascar you see flames all the time. People are always burning bits of forest to grow stuff on, strip and burning. It's a bad thing. Trying to discourage it, but it was happening. And we were put in a watchtower where the fossas are supposed to be in the middle of this Sahara. It was quite hot, remote, and it was 20 miles away from the camp. So myself and this American girl were given the job of, because what you had to do once you'd got the fossa out of the trap, the idea was that you anaesthetised it and then you put a radio collar on it. Then you could track it with radio telemetry, which is like you hold it up like that, so you can track them, see what they're doing, whether they're resting, whether they're hunting, whatever they're doing, and we'll come and collect you. Well, 6 hours later we were in this tower. It was getting dark, no one had come. It was getting hot, we didn't have much water, we didn't have much food. We had one packet of Lucky Strike fags, I think, between us, which we were resorted to smoking out of sheer desperation, and no one came. And we thought they're going to forget us completely. And we were getting to be ill, thirsty, malnutrition. It was getting hot. And then, much to our relief, we saw these little lights in the distance. Because one of the things you don't realize about these real wildernesses, they're inky black. And you can see for miles, the slightest light you can see. We saw these lights bobbing up and down. And the reason they were bobbing up and down was that the people kept tripping over termite mounds as they were walking and falling over. But it was the party of people, this very nice woman from the channel had remembered that we were trapped out there and thank God they came to rescue us. We would have died, stuck out there otherwise. So that was the only thing that happened.
Thanks for watching our mini documentary about Bernie, Fossa expert and zoologist OG. If you like this video, be sure to check out the rest of our content at thecoolanimalblog.com or visit our YouTube channel for more videos like these.